Have you ever walked into a room and felt like every pair of eyes was burning a hole through you, judging your every move? That paralyzing sensation where you suddenly become hyper-aware of how you stand, how you speak, even how you breathe. You feel exposed, objectified, reduced to nothing more than what others see. This is not just anxiety. This is what Jean-Paul Sartre called the fundamental structure of human consciousness in the presence of others. And he captured it in one of the most misunderstood quotes in philosophy: "Hell is other people." But here is what most people miss. Sartre was not saying that humans are inherently toxic or that you should avoid society. He was diagnosing something far more disturbing. He was revealing how our sense of self becomes imprisoned the moment we allow another person's gaze to define who we are. This is not a metaphor. This is the psychological architecture of shame, social anxiety, and self-alienation, and understanding it changes everything. The phrase, "hell is other people," comes from Sartre's one-act play, No Exit, written in 1944 during the Nazi occupation of France. 3 characters are locked in a room together for eternity. No physical torture, no demons, just each other. And that becomes their hell. Why? Because they cannot escape the judgment of the others. They are forced to see themselves only through the eyes of their companions. One character, Garcin, desperately wants to be seen as brave, but the others see him as a coward. Another, Estelle, needs to be desired, but she is seen as vain and shallow. The third, Inez, wants control, but she is seen as manipulative. Each person becomes trapped in the perception of the others. They lose the ability to define themselves. Sartre was not describing a supernatural punishment. He was describing what happens in every social interaction when we forget that we are free. The philosophical weight of this becomes clear when you understand Sartre's concept of the look. Le regard. This is not just being seen. This is the moment when another person's consciousness invades your world and turns you from a subject into an object. When you are alone, you are pure subjectivity. You are the center of your universe. You interpret the world. You assign meaning. You are free. But the moment someone looks at you, something shifts. Suddenly, you are not just experiencing the world. You are part of someone else's world. You become a thing to be judged, categorized, evaluated. You lose your position as the center. You become peripheral. And this is where the existential conflict begins. You are forced to recognize that you exist for others in ways you cannot control. Sartre wrote, "I am possessed by the other. The other's look fashions my body in its nakedness, causes it to be born, sculptures it, produces it as it is, sees it as I shall never see it." You are no longer just yourself. You are what they see. Sartre's philosophy rests on one radical claim: existence precedes essence. Unlike objects, which are defined before they exist, humans exist first and create their essence through action. A chair is designed to be a chair before it is built. But you are not designed. You are thrown into existence without a predefined purpose, and you must invent yourself. This is freedom. Terrifying, absolute freedom. But this freedom is constantly under threat. And the primary threat is the gaze of the other. When someone looks at you, they try to define you. They assign you an essence. They turn your existence into an object with fixed qualities. And if you accept their definition, you betray your freedom. You become complicit in your own objectification. Consider what Sartre calls bad faith. This is when you lie to yourself about your freedom. When you pretend you have no choice. When you say, "This is just who I am," or "I had no option." You are denying the fundamental truth of your existence. You are treating yourself as an object rather than a subject. And the most common form of bad faith is social. You adopt the identity others project onto you. You become the role they expect you to play. The dutiful employee, the agreeable friend, the attractive body. You forget that you are not these things. You are the consciousness that chooses whether to perform them. Sartre's insight is brutal. Every moment you accept someone else's definition of you, you die a little. You surrender your subjectivity. You allow yourself to become a thing in their world rather than the creator of your own. This is why No Exit is so psychologically devastating. The characters are in hell not because they are being punished, but because they have lost the ability to escape the definitions imposed on them. They are locked into identities they did not choose, and they lack the courage to reject those identities. They have become objects, and once you become an object, hell is indeed other people, because you need them to validate the false self you have constructed. You become addicted to their gaze. You need their approval, their recognition, their judgment. And this dependency is the death of freedom. Sartre provides one of the most vivid illustrations of the look in Being and Nothingness through the example of the Voyeur at the Keyhole. Imagine you are alone in a hallway, peering through a keyhole, watching someone in a room. In this moment, you are pure subject. You are absorbed in the act of watching. You are not self-conscious. You are not thinking about yourself. You are simply experiencing. But then you hear footsteps. Someone is coming down the hall. Suddenly, you are no longer the voyeur. You are the voyeur being caught. In an instant, your entire psychological reality inverts. You are no longer the one who sees. You are the one who is seen. You become an object of judgment. And with that comes shame. This is the key. Shame is not about breaking a rule. Shame is about being caught in the act of being yourself. It is the recognition that you exist for others in a way you cannot control. Sartre wrote, "I am ashamed of what I am." Shame is the recognition of the fact that I am indeed that object which the other is looking at and judging. The voyeur is not ashamed of watching. The voyeur is ashamed of being seen watching. The shame arises because in that moment, you realize you have been reduced to an object in someone else's consciousness. You are no longer free. You are defined by their gaze, and you cannot escape it. But here is the remedy. Sartre teaches that shame only has power when you accept the other's judgment as truth. The moment you recognize that their perception is just one perspective among infinite possibilities, you reclaim your freedom. You are not what they see. You are the consciousness that chooses how to respond to what they see. This is the existential shift. You stop trying to control how others perceive you. You stop performing for their gaze. You accept that you will always be an object in their world, but you refuse to let that define your existence. You return to your subjectivity. You remember that you are free. This does not mean you ignore others. It means you stop letting their gaze colonize your sense of self. You stop asking, "What do they think of me?" and start asking, "What do I choose to be?" This is the ultimate act of existential courage, to exist in the presence of others without surrendering your freedom to their judgment. To recognize that hell is only other people when you forget that you are not an object. You are a subject, and no one can take that from you unless you give it away. Albert Camus, Sartre's contemporary and sometime rival, approached this same problem from a slightly different angle. While Sartre focused on the structure of consciousness and the gaze, Camus focused on the absurd. In The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus argues that life is inherently meaningless, And the only authentic response is to revolt against that meaninglessness by creating your own meaning. But when it comes to the judgment of others, Camus arrives at a similar conclusion. He writes, "You will never be happy if you continue to search for what happiness consists of. You will never live if you are looking for the meaning of life." The moment you try to find your worth in the eyes of others, you lose the ability to live authentically. You become a performer in someone else's narrative. Simone de Beauvoir, Sartre's lifelong companion and intellectual partner, extended this analysis into the realm of gender and oppression. In The Second Sex, she argues that women are systematically objectified by the male gaze. They are defined as the other, rather than as subjects. But her insight applies universally. Anytime a group or individual is reduced to an object, they are denied their freedom. De Beauvoir writes, "One is not born, but rather becomes a woman," meaning that identity is not given. It is imposed through social structures and internalized through bad faith. The remedy is the same. Refuse the identity imposed on you. Reclaim your subjectivity. Define yourself. Karl Marx offers another lens. He argued that under capitalism, workers are alienated from their labor. They become objects in the production process rather than subjects who create. The worker is defined by their function rather than their humanity. This is another form of objectification. Another way that hell is other people, when those people are part of a system that denies your freedom. Marx did not use Sartre's language, but the diagnosis is parallel. When you are reduced to your economic function, you lose your essence. You become a tool, and the remedy is the same. Reclaim your agency. Refuse to be defined by the role imposed on you. Friedrich Nietzsche anticipated Sartre's insight with his concept of the herd mentality. Nietzsche argued that most people live according to the values and judgments of the crowd. They allow themselves to be defined by social norms rather than creating their own values. He wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." This is exactly what Sartre means by bad faith. When you accept the tribe's definition of you, you surrender your freedom. You become an object in their moral system. Nietzsche's remedy is to become the overman, the one who creates his own values. Sartre would say the same thing in different words. Become the subject of your own existence. Stop being an object in someone else's. So, is hell really other people? Only if you let it be. Sartre's philosophy is not pessimistic. It is liberating. He is not saying you should withdraw from society. He is saying you should engage with others from a position of freedom rather than dependency. You should recognize that you will always be an object in their world, but you do not have to accept their definition as truth. You are always free to choose who you become. This is the existential burden and the existential gift. You are condemned to be free, and that means you are responsible for who you are. The modern application is immediate. Every time you feel social anxiety, recognize it for what it is. It is the fear of being objectified, the fear that others will define you in ways you cannot control. But you can control one thing: your response. You can choose to reclaim your subjectivity. You can refuse to perform for their gaze. You can recognize that their judgment is just one perspective in an infinite sea of possibilities. And you can choose to define yourself through your actions rather than through their perceptions. This is not easy. It requires constant vigilance, but it is the only path to authenticity. Sartre spent his life teaching that freedom is not a gift. It is a responsibility. And the first step is recognizing that you are not what others see. You are the consciousness that chooses how to exist in the world. So the next time you walk into a room and feel every eye on you, remember this. They are not seeing you. They are seeing an object they have constructed. But you are not an object. You are a subject, and you are free. If this resonates, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more deep dives into the philosophy that changes how you see yourself. And remember Sartre's final words: freedom is what you do with what's been done to you. Hell is only other people when you forget that you are free.